I have two questions. I'm going to put them together, but they're from active workers whose spouses, one spouse is a retiree. So the United Federation of Teachers chose to do legislation that would go around the traditional collective bargaining and has proposed that the city council give a $10,000 to each of the 28,000 underpaid New York City paraprofessionals. Paras are these wonderful city employees that help the teachers with all sorts of critical issues. They really make the teachers' days a lot more tolerable, and they're able to handle students with special needs. But they are greatly underpaid. And instead of doing this at the collective bargaining table, the United Federation of Teachers did a bill in the city council that today has 48 sponsors out of 51. This would give them a $10,000 payment annually if it was approved by the council, which would be about $280 million a year that would have to be funded by the council, not through collective bargaining. However, that $10,000 check, they call it a respect check, is not pensionable. So these poor employees who are making, I believe, about $38,000 or $40,000 a year, this money would not be pensionable. So they're going to be, they would then, I guess, want to or not want to, they would be forced to stay employed in order to get this $10,000 because it's not pensionable and would not apply to their retirement. No other union member is being offered non-pensionable money. Would you, as mayor, be willing to sit down in the classroom with paras, who are the real backbone of the schools, to discuss a salary overhaul for paraprofessionals? Is the question from Marie.
I'd, as mayor, be more than happy to sit in many classrooms just as a normal course. I could learn a lot, you know. I'm 71 years old, but to be perfectly serious, I've been in classrooms and many times. We've actually, with Guardian Angels, we've been asked to come into those classrooms and those schools for dysfunctional children, children with issues, children who become a harm to themselves, to the teachers and the other students, violent students, students who at any moment can be triggered off and commit horrible violence and disruption in the classroom. And you need the paraprofessionals there. They end up helping the teacher by dealing with the children who are going to distract the class, who have their own issues. Of course, they need to be given that wage level.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Once I get in on January 1st, 2026, I got to tell you, I've met with the Citizens Budget Commission like 3 times. There's going to be a mess. There's going to be a lot of things that the Adams administration said was there that is not going to be there, not because of corruption, but because it was a re-election budget that was unrealistic. They didn't put anything in the rainy day fund, the reserves. We're facing tremendous fiscal problems. The case you're making is the same case that was made to me by the EMTs. You only get $39.
Next question.
Right, $39,000. They don't have parity with the other uniform services. I have some former Guardian Angels who are EMTs. It's like 12-hour shifts constantly with the whistles and the lights and bells going from one emergency to another emergency, sometimes emotionally disturbed people fighting them when they're trying to help them. And they're not getting any respect. I think in many instances, the paraprofessionals in class, the EMTs, first thing we got to get them is respect. And then we got to get them up in pay parity. But, I could sound like Santa Claus here. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to look into the bag. And remember, in Christmas, sometimes the stocking, if you weren't a good boy or girl, you had coal and wood in your stocking. I got to make sure Eric Adams hasn't left coal and wood in the stocking of monies that were supposed to be able to fund the basic running of government. But they deserve it. There's no doubt. And I know, having had the personal experiences, I don't think Zoran Mandami has had these experiences as a trust fund baby, protected. And I certainly know that Andrew Cuomo has not had those experiences.
So to answer Keith's question, how soon would you bring pay parity to FDNY EMS? I'm assuming your response to that would be as soon as you could.
Yeah, and look, I've seen what they do. It's incredible. And you talk about post-traumatic shock syndrome. They are exposed to things that most other uniformed services are not. Because remember, they're taking the patients on a gurney, putting them in the ambulance. They're having to continue to care for them as they bring them to the ER or the ICU. And a lot of times, whether it's a drug situation, overdose, the person wakes up, they're fighting, there's resistance, they get battered and bruised, the lights, the bells, the whistle. They don't even have a chance to get a cup of coffee sometimes. You know, they're going to take a break, and then all of a sudden there's another 911 call. There are not enough wagons to service the 911 calls. And the men and women out there never get recognized. When's the last time you saw the EMTs get recognized?
Oh, I want to remind you, I was FDNY EMS, and I will tell you, my pension today is, and I'm retired a long time. My pension today is still only $35,000. So it tells you what my colleagues are making today is still not anywhere near more than what I take home. So it's concerning because they've lost their ability to transition to other positions for promotions. We used to have a program where you could work for the city of New York in your job, let's say an EMS. The city would pay for your schooling, usually through a CUNY program, but it would be for like a doctor, for a nurse, or any type of a medical position that you could then promote to, but you would then owe the city X amount of years because you stayed, they put you through school. So today you're an EMT, but if you're taking a college program, you could then, promote to a doctor or a PA or an RN and continue within the medical field. Right now, since the merger of 1996 with FDNY, they really don't have a career path. And no one in the fire department has taken them and said, listen, since 1996, March of 96 was the merger. Their wages haven't gone up. They did get better ambulances. We did get uniforms that are better than what we had before, better equipment. We used to hold our oxygen tanks by the regulator. We didn't even have bags. But the pay is the critical issue. So even though I'm retired, these are my brothers and sisters in service, and I still see them fighting the same issues that we fought 20-something, 30-something years ago. So, and the paras are the same way. You will not, this is our concern, my concern. You will not attract workers to stay in the city. You will not keep them to stay in the city, especially if they're watching the city take away the retirees' healthcare benefits, having to use their pensions now on healthcare because the city reneged on its promise. And then who's going to want to work as an EMT or paramedic or even as a para when we're not paying our people a respectable wage? So it's unrealistic to say the day that you come in, you're going to end up giving them all a raise to the maximum of what they can do. But I think in consideration, candidates could consider putting in place to the goal of where they should be, and then in a stepped program, maybe implement those salaries so that they can live here and work here and want to stay here because they feel respected. I'll tell you, I don't think many city workers feel respected or appreciated. And I hope in some way that can change in the future.
No doubt. And there's always been, as you know, a bitter divide in the FDNY towards the EMTs, because a lot of times the fire trucks also go out on a run, like an EMT run, which they shouldn't have to do. Right. We need more EMTs. We need more wagons. Why are we sending out a whole ladder truck? Why are we sending out a whole firefighting contingent to deal with a medical issue that could be dealt with by EMTs? And I'll tell you, again, the personal experiences that I have. In many instances, when I was picked up and scraped off the ground by EMTs, and anybody who knows my life, you know that, quite a few times, I got better care in the wagon on the way to the hospital than I got in the ER when some intern was looking at me and I was looking at them and I was saying, oh my God, I happen to feel that maybe I'm the first person or second person they ever dealt with who had this kind of a medical emergency. The nurses and the EMTs knew more about my situation than sometimes the doctor, who looked like Dr. Kildare, Dr. Casey with the schmuck, very professional. So I understand, from having been out there, talk to them, watching what they have to deal with, that has to be prioritized. But again, I don't want to come in and sugar you up and be like a sugar daddy telling you, oh, I'll be able to do this, because I know the Eric Adams administration. I know how they've cooked the books. The Department of Budget. Ooh, I have a feeling that, it's like when you come back to a house that's been occupied by somebody else, and you go room to room and you say, what happened to this? What happened to this? What happened to this? That a lot of it is not going to be where it was supposed to be. Not because anybody stole it, but because of incompetence, inefficiency, no transparency, no week to week. They have to give reports out. This way you can track it. It's sort of like what the cops have to do with ComStat. ComStat came about, and now they had to answer every week for what was going on in the precinct. Before that, they had to answer once a year. Same thing. Every week, you have to answer for your agency, and it's not just the commissioner, but all the deputies and everyone who is in charge of an integral part of the services that you're supposed to be providing to the people.